Hey everybody, I'm Amanda with DevExpress and welcome to 17.1 Launch Week and our third webinar of the week, new in 17.1 CodeRush for Roslyn, presented by Chief Scientist of the IDE team Mark Miller and CodeRush evangelist Rory Becker. FYI, this session is being recorded and it will be made available on our DevExpress YouTube channel. We will also do a live Q&A at the end of this presentation. Just type your questions in the GoToWebinar control panel at any time throughout the broadcast. All right, thank you so much for joining us. I will now hand things over to Mark and Rory.
Thank you, Amanda. Rory, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Mark. How are you?
I'm so glad to have you back here on the other side of the line. I am loving it. By the way, Rory and I have been recording some feature of the week on YouTube. Today we're going to show you, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rory.
I say we haven't. Actually, I'm going to be posting some of the links to those videos in the chat as we go through, as relevant features come up. So stay tuned and look at the chat window if you want to see some of those.
That's right. Keep your eyes on the chat window. Rory's going to be ready with those as we go through. I wanted to just give a brief introduction to CodeRush if you weren't familiar with it. It's an extension to Visual Studio. It's essentially a powerful combination of developer tools that cover areas of visualization, visualizing code, navigating through code, debugging code, and creating code. So if you're a software developer, there are features of CodeRush that can help you do these tasks, do your job faster with greater efficiency. CodeRush for Roslyn is a special version of CodeRush that exploits the Roslyn engine inside Visual Studio. And as a result, it loads faster and uses less memory. So that's a little bit of an overview, just a brief introduction into it. What I want to do is I want to go in over into Visual Studio, and normally when we do a demo with CodeRush, I've already got a project loaded over here. I'm going to diverge from that normal path, as you know, my friends at DevExpress know I'm likely to often go off Rails. And instead of starting a demo on Rails, I'm going to start the demo completely off Rails. And so what we'll do is we will create a brand new solution, a project, and it's going to be functional. It's going to actually solve a problem. That's what we're going to do. So you'll see how CodeRush helps you in writing code. You'll see some of the new features in 17.1. When those come up, we'll talk about them a little bit. When we're showing older features, look to the chat window. Rory is likely to put a link out there for those older features. Okay? So with that, we'll just get started. We'll go ahead and create a new project. And I'm going to call this DXL's demo, like that. And it's going to be class library. We're going to start off pretty simple. So it'll be a class library there. We'll say OK. And let's talk about the problem we want to solve. So I want to create a user interface that has multiple cells arranged in a grid. And the cells will have content inside of them and might have other properties as well, such as a content creation date property. So that's my cell. The grid is two-dimensional, so I've got rows and columns. I want to create a struct that can identify the location in that grid. For example, column index 3 and row index 2, for example. And I want that cell position, that's going to be a struct called cell position, and I want to be able to use that. I also want to be able to increment it, kind of cycle through all of the cells. So if I just do a ++ operator on that, I want to be able to increment it. I want to be able to compare the two different cell positions and see if they're equal to each other. And I want also to have test cases built for all of that. So that's what our goal is. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to start in this brand new project that we created here. And we're going to create our new struct. So I'm going to use a template to do that. And we'll call this cell position like this. And I'm going to have two properties inside of this. I'm going to have a property called column and a property called row. Now I've used templates to get this far. I used the letter S to give me the struct. And Rory, I'm hearing typing, so I have my best.
Yes,
and I can see over in the chat window, he's already got a link for you out there on the templates. I used a template to get the struct and a template to get this int column. So all I had to really do is I typed maybe 2 or 3 characters, and then I also had to type in cell position right up there for the identifier name, for the class name, and down here for the field name, I typed in the word column. But aside from that, I just typed in very few keystrokes. So code templates are helping me there. But now I want another property called row, which is the same type as int. And to get to that, I'm going to use a cool new feature in 17.1 called duplicate line. It's actually smart duplicate line. And I hit Shift Enter here, and it will duplicate the line and select what it thinks I want to change. Okay? And based on what I change, it will then refine its selection in future applications of the duplicate line feature. So, but this is all I need for now. I just duplicated the line once and then typed in row, right? So it was very fast and quick to get down to that next line. Okay, now at this point, I want to have a constructor so I can construct this, and I want to be able to pass in column and row to the constructor. And I want to have properties, read-only properties for column and row as well, so that I can read those values from outside of cell position. So to do that, I'm going to invoke a new feature in 17.1 called the declare menu. And I just press Alt plus Insert to bring up that declare menu. By the way, Rory, if you don't mind throwing out the shortcuts as well, if they feel
certainly
useful, that might be useful to folks out there. And so inside the declare menu, there are a number of options here. I can filter this out just by typing in, for example, like CON, and there's my constructor one. That's the one I want. Hit enter on that. Now it's asking me which members do I want to initialize through parameters to the constructor. And I'm going to select all of those. And down at the bottom, notice there's also a tap control for options. I'm going to tap that. And now I have other options that have popped up here. One of them is G for generate properties. I'm going to select that as well. And then I'm just going to hit enter to close down the hint and enter to accept that. And now we have the code. Here's the code that's generated for us right here. We have our constructor and we have our two read-only properties. So that's not a bad start, right? We've used just a couple keystrokes, and most of this code has been generated for us by CodeRush. Now, over here I have a class 1 that's kind of bugging me a bit. I want to rename that, so I'm going to just hit the CodeRush key and choose rename file to match type. So now we've got cell position over here. And I want to come in here and I want to manage my NuGet packages because I said I wanted to do unit testing. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to grab NUnit and let's install that. There you can see we finished that installation. So now I want to create some unit tests for this. Well, I can use CodeRush templates again. So TF for a test fixture. We'll call this the cell position tests. And we'll have like a simple creation test.
Okay, for those not quite following all along in the chat, we do have another video, T is for test, where we go through a whole mess of test templates and similar facilities. So it's good to check that out and find a bit more detail on this subject. Pardon me.
Thanks, Rory. Good point. That was actually a very cool video. Talked about some of the shortcuts for creating test cases. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to create a new instance of cell position like this. And all I want to do is I want to check to make sure that my test here is going to be like an assert equal expected value is 0 here and cell position dot column. I want to check that. I'm going to use duplicate line on here, and I want to make sure that row is also 0, like that. Just a simple test, and we can run this now just to get a sense of this. By the way, when we run, you're going to see a very cool feature showing up in the output that's occurring down here, the color highlighting. So if it's good, you get green, and if it fails, you get red, and if there's a warning or something ignored, you get something in orange. You see this with the test runner, and optionally, you can also see this with your builds, which is nice.
That's particularly useful for calling out those errors when they just stream past in the output window. It's very nice to find out exactly where that happened and as a result of what.
Exactly. So there we've done this. Let's do a variation of this right here. Let's come down here. Let's recreate cell position. Let's give it a 3,4 location. And let's make sure that the column is in fact 3 and the row is in fact 4. So that'll be like a second test that we'll add right there.
For those who are curious, we do have keyboard shortcuts for all of these things. So if you just want to run the test you're in, it's Control-T followed by R for run, sort of test run, nice and simple.
And there you go. Test is passed. So that's good. I want to move this to another file, so I'm going to just come in here. I'm going to hit the CodeRush key again, choose Move Type to File, bring that over there, and let's go. let's go back over into cell position. Actually, let's go into, actually I want to stay in test for a second. Let's create another test. And this one I wanted to create an equality test right here. So I'll just hit T to create a new test. And let's create equality test. We'll call it that. Let's go bring up I want to grab, I'm pretty sure I copied like this line of code to the clipboard, but I'm not sure where it is. So I'm going to hit Control-Shift-V, and you're going to see the clipboard history pop up right here. And you can see what's on the clipboard history. So I could grab this piece here, or maybe just this. I just want that. I'm going to just remove it for a second because now that it's on the clipboard, I can use a template that exploits what's on the clipboard. So I can use that new feature in 17.1, the clipboard history, to grab something that I want, such as this, a type reference, and then come back in and exploit it inside of templates, for example, or paste if I want to, if I choose to do that. So for the equality test, I want to create something that looks like this. Let's actually change this to CP1, use duplicate line on it. We'll change this to CP2, like that. We're okay with all of those. There's that smart duplicate line feature again. And then I want to say assert equal and CP1 and CP2, like that. And I might want to do that, for example. We can do a quick run on that to see if that works. I'm expecting this to work because it's a struct. And there we go, that passed. And then I want to also do something like this. Assert true, CP1 equals CP2, like this. And we've got a problem because that operator cannot be applied to these operand types, to the operand type cell position. Well, that's okay because we can come in, bring up the declare menu again, start typing in equal, and there you can see we've got an equality members piece right here. We can bring this up and select which members we want to test for equality. And if we tap Control for options, we can overload the equality operators and also optionally implement IEquatable. So these are some of the options we can do. The one I want is I want to overload that equality operators because I want to be able to say, hey, is this location in the grid equal to that location? And I want that code to be simple. Instead of comparing column and column and row, I just want to compare my cell positions. So I'm going to select that, hit enter, and there you can see it's given me my equals overrides, it's given me my get hash code, and most importantly, it's given me my not equals and my equals operator overrides.
This is a fantastic feature, Mark. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I find it very hard to remember the specifics of what I need to do to make sure that my object compare in an equal sense. Here, all I need to do is to know that I'm looking to insert code, hence Alt Insert for declare, and I just get to pick the equalities methods. I can then pick the specifics that I'm after, hit enter, and CodeRush has just built all of that for you. There's a lot of ceremony goes into those methods and their implementations. So to not have to spend your cognitive load on remembering all of that is a fantastic sort of lifting of the burden for a developer.
Yes, it is. And that's the goal of CodeRush, right? The goal of CodeRush is to give you tools that allow you to do those things that you want to do, right? Designing the software, writing the software, ensuring the quality of the software, navigating through and understanding software, doing all of that with a lower cognitive load. That's what we're trying to do. We really genuinely, that's where our focus is. That's where our study is and our research is. So and we managed to achieve that, I think, to some degree, right? This lowering of cognitive load while you work and a shift of focus, right? Instead of focusing on, wait, what was that thing I need to remember again? Right? What was that structure? What's the syntax? Instead of having to remember those things, right? Or even worse, oh, now I know I have to override my equals, method. Now I've got to override get hash code. Instead of taking you through all of that tedium, right, that you'd have to do, we're just like, okay, look, you tell us what you want to do. The essence of it is what it is. And if we can automate those parts of it, we will. All right. So we've got cell position here. We've got the equality test out here. Let's go back over here and we can check this and we can now run it. We notice we don't have the squiggly underlines. Let's run the test. And we can see that that is passed, which is not bad. Now I want to also maybe do one more duplicate line up here. We'll call this CP3. And let's change it to, like, for example, 2.3. Let's just swap them around. Or 2.1 rather. Okay? And I also want to have like an is true where CP1, and I want to have a check that says CP1 is not equal to CP3. For example, I want those tests to be there, right? I want to make sure these two are equal and these two are showing up unequal to each other.
Yeah.
So we'll just do a quick run of that test, and that passes as well. By the way, you've been seeing me use the mouse on here. Similarly, you can hit Control KR to run the test that you're in. So I just hit those keystrokes right there. Wait, did I do that right? Oh, I'm sorry, not Control K, Control TR, my bad. Okay, T for test and R for run. And you can do the entire file, which is the shortcut, remind me, Rory, is Control
TF, I believe.
Right? Yeah.
For file or fixture, I forget which it stands for.
Exactly. There are a number of shortcuts that are in there. So, and I think we've also got a shortcut, I believe, for run last test that you've run. So if I was somewhere else, not in this active test, and I wanted to run it because I've just done it, like for example, I was in cell position, making some changes there, I can run that last test as well, hitting that shortcut. I forget that shortcut, but why don't you check that for me, Rory, while I continue to write code. So not bad. So far, not bad. What I also mentioned at the beginning of this, though, that I wanted to take the cell position and be able to increment it. And I wanted to increment that cell position through the grid. So say for example, the cell position's in the top left, if I increment it once, it's going to go over one column and keep going over one column until it gets to the border of the grid, right? Whatever when I say the border, the last column on the grid.
So if we start in the upper left-hand corner of a 4x4 grid, we go from the 0 column to the 1 to the 2 to the 3, all staying in the 0 row. And then the next one is going to be the 0 column on row 1. And we're going to proceed from left to right again in that kind of visual.
Exactly. That's exactly what I want to do. And then when I get to the very end, then I want to wrap back around to the upper left corner again. So that's again, let's see what we have here that's interesting that we can grab to save us some code. I'll take just cell position again. I'll come back in here. We'll create a new instance of cell position in here. This is going to be, we'll say cell position like this. We're expecting it to be at 0, 0. You know, the other thing that I want to do though, Rory, I just realized I've got, in order to tell where a cell position is, look what I got to do. I need to,
you've got 2 tests, haven't you?
Exactly. I'm checking, and I want to change it to 1. So let's create something here. Let's just come here, assert true, cell position dot is at 0, 0. So we're going to create a new method here is what we're going to do. We're going to hit the CodeRush key, declare that method. We select where we want to put it. I'm going to put it right there. We're going to come in here. Let's go give these good names. This is going to be column, and this is going to be row. By the way, look at this. This is the CodeRush naming assistant, also new in 17.1, right? And I can choose it. I can just select it and hit enter for it. So notice back I was over here. I typed in C. It was saying, hey, do you want to name this column? Oh, yeah, I guess I do.
So this is another one of those features that is effectively basing its information on your project and what you've been doing so far. So it's learning based on what you're doing, the more common things that you're likely to want to use.
Yes. And it's nice, right? Because again, it's just sitting there saying, hey, do you want some help? If you do, I'm here. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, you just keep typing. It doesn't slow you down at all.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, I was like, just barreling it through it before I was like, oh, wait, I should talk about this feature because it's in 17.1. So now we've got our isAt method. We can come back over here, do a quick test on that, see if that works, run that test. And we're expecting that to pass. Good. So now we've got this isAt method that we can now use to save us some time. And now what I want to do is come in and I want to say cell position plus plus, like that. Well, that's not going to work either. So we're going to need to go in and write some code in cell position. So let's dive into cell position. Let's create a new method. We'll call it increment, like that. And let me make it, I want to make it public. So we're going to do that. By the way, Roy, I just realized I just cycled visibility with one shortcut key. And I bet you are not prepped by having a link to that. Because
I will find one for that specifically. That's not a problem.
So yeah, so Roy's going to find that and put that in there. But it just occurred to me, these are features that Rory and I take for granted because we've been using them for years. But it's really good to show people and tell people what's going on there. So that one key, that cycling up and down in the visibility is Rory's going to find a link for that and put that out there. Okay, so inside increment, right now we're going to leave this empty. We'll come back to it. I'm going to drop a marker so I can come back to it. Also, I want to have the an overload for the plus plus operator over here, and I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to call increment on it like this, And we can now, let's go back over into our test. We've got this plus here. Let's duplicate this line, and now we're expecting this to maybe be here, like that. So that's kind of what we're expecting. Now, if you've been following, you're at this point, you're thinking, wait a second, how's that going to work? You didn't finish everything. And the answer is, it's probably not. We're going to get a failure, right? That's what's likely to happen, and that's what happens. So now you can see the failure that's showing up there, okay? So we need to do some things to fix this, right? We need to, for example, implement our increment logic. But if you're following along, you might be thinking, wait a second, how is Mark going to know, how will Mark and Rory know when the cell is on the far right column and then it needs to increment back? Well, I think there are a number of ways to do this, but I think one of the ways to do it is I think we're going to have to create a new class, and I'm going to call it table. And inside here, we're going to have a property called num columns. And we'll have another property called num rows. By the way, I just used a feature called camel case nav to jump me from the whole selection just over in front of the C in columns, so I could change it only to rows. By the way, if I use, look what's happening. If we had another property here, began with num, and I was using smart duplicate line, I just want to show what it's doing right in here. Num owners, whatever I want to do, that sort of thing. So it's smart. It sees whether the changes are, and as you go down, that sort of thing. But we only need these two right here. We're going to quickly come back in here. We're going to grab the constructor. We're going to select everything in here. We'll go ahead and generate properties for it as well, just like we did before. This kind of common kind of thing that we do again. So we've got our class table. It's got num columns and num rows. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. I'm also going to take it. I'm going to say, let's move it to its own file. So we've got table inside of its own file. There you can see table right there. And now what I want to do is go back into cell position, and I want to create, is table in the clipboard? It is. I want to create a new variable of type table. We'll call it table. And we'll come back and we'll create a new constructor for it again one more time. We'll select all of it, tap control, generate properties again. And you might be thinking, wait a second, Mark, you don't want to generate properties for column and row. And I'm going to say, don't worry, it's okay, CodeRush has got my back. And if we look down here, you'll see that we have table and row and column declared only once. We have those properties. So it knew it did not need to redeclare row and column because they were already there. So now I've got this bounding table here. I've got an old constructor that's not working. The reason it's not working is because table is not initialized, and we have to initialize that. So we can come in here and maybe do something along these lines and just say table is null. So now we have the ability to create cell positions passing in a table. And now that we have a table, we can come in here to increment and actually execute some code. So we might come in here and we might say, well, okay, if table is null, then get out. Don't do any increment. We can only advance the column and the row if we've got a bounding table. And then we'll come down here and we'll say, let's see, well, let's say column plus plus. And then we want to say if column is greater than or equal to table.num columns. If that's the case, then we want to say, well, let's do row plus plus, like that. And then we want to have code again that looks a little bit like this, but now instead of testing column, we want to test row, and so we'll go look at num rows, like that. So if row is greater than num rows, then we'll say row is equal to 0, like that. So there's our increment. Let's go run our test and see what happens. And we still have a failure. Well, let's set a breakpoint here on our increment right here, and let's see what happens. In fact, actually, it's not there that I want to set a breakpoint. I'm suspecting the problem might be in here. So let's set a breakpoint in there. And we'll come in here, and we're going to choose debug test now instead of run test. And now we're inside the code. I'm just going to hit F10 to step over it. And now you can see a cool feature in CodeRush called the debug visualizer, which tells us what's going on. And so we can see, oh, wait, table is null. That's right. I forgot to set table to any value. So increment's failing, and we're losing it. We're getting out of there. So let's stop that test. Let's fix that. So we want to fix that by setting up a passing in 0, 0, a new table with dimensions 3, 4. So a 3 by 4 table. And we'll do that. And we will, again, come in here and we'll debug the test. Shortcut for that, I think, is Control-T-D for debug.
D for debug. That's the nice thing about CodeRush, actually. Largely, the shortcuts are mnemonics for just standard English sentences. So, you know, test, debug, test, run is TR and TD. These are very simple things, making life, you know, that much easier to grasp in this case. And
so this time we have we have passed the test. So let's do a couple things in here. I want to take this and I want to come in and I want to, let's introduce a local for it. Let's call it table 3x4, like that, 3 by 4 table. In fact, now that I think about it, what I really want to do, let's do this. Let's widen scope, promote it up to a field. Put it right there, okay? And we're doing a creation here, but what I really want to do is put that creation in a test setup method. So we type in TSU for test setup method. There's my 3 by 4 initialization. Now I want to show you smart duplicate line again. I'm going to use it here. Okay, we're okay with table, but what I really want to do is I want to create a 5 by 6 as well for my test cases. I want to have some prefab tables in here created. Watch what's happening now, right, as I go through here.
That's really good. CodeRush has not only spotted the piece that you varied, it's actually predicting how you varied it. So in this case, both values are going up by 2. All right, it's spotted that pattern. So you've got odd numbers down the left, you've got even numbers down the right. If you'd have started off going 3 by 4 and then 4 by 5 and then started duplicating, I'm sure it would have spotted that pattern. There we go. See, fantastic stuff. So again, all this cognitive load you don't have to worry about. You give it the example. It's almost like when you're in Excel and you sort of drag a cell down and it spots the pattern.
Yeah. So watch this. We'll do the same thing down here. We're going to say we're keeping table, but we're going to come in and we're going to change this to 4 and this to 5. And we'll also change the table name here to 4 and 5. Now that we've established the pattern, watch what happens.
Very nice.
All the way down to there. Very quick to write this kind of code that otherwise might be tedious.
Well, before we have this, we'd maybe duplicate the line by copy pasting, and then we'd have to go back and refine and change all of those little things. I know you sort of go into overwrite mode and start over typing some of these things, and of course you get the 2 digits worth, and now you have a whole series of other problems. And now your mind's been taken completely out of solving whatever actual client-based problem it was you were dealing with. With this, you just go shifted enter, duplicate, 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 all of those defaults being filled in with very sensible values, and you haven't had to forget what problem space you're in.
Yes, exactly. Watch what I'm going to do here. I'm going to come down here. We've got a 3 by 4 table. So it's going to go 0. Let's, well, we'll go ahead and we'll accept this. Actually, I want to create one more table is what I think I want to do. Let's come on here. We're going to create a table that's like a 10 by 2 table is what we'll do, like that. So I have a 10 by 2. We'll come down here. We'll duplicate this line as well. And we will do 10 by 2. Just create this. And so we'll come down here. So now we've got the same, so we'll use that 10 by 2 table down here. Like that. And so what we want to do here is we're going to say 0, 1, 2. And now notice again here what duplicate line is doing for me here as I go down through here, right? So we can go all the way down through to the 9th column. Then we expect to jump back around. In fact, what I can do now is come in here, copy all of this, paste it, and just change the row to a 1, like this. And so we're expecting that, and then finally we're expecting to come back around after we increment the cell position one more time. So let's do a run on that. And we failed, interestingly enough. And wait, where did we fail? Why didn't I'm not seeing the fail on in terms of where that happened. Test has failed. Member is not public. Is that my problem because it's just not a public method? Okay, it looks like it was. It looks like it's. All right. Okay, so we'll try one more time. Sorry about that. We'll run the test. Okay, now we failed and we have a better answer, and then we have assert, and there you can see where the problem is right there. So we have a problem.
This we can deduce that the first 10 or so tests actually did work, and that it's only when we change, is it row or column?
Yeah, when we increment, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, there is. It just occurred to me that I have a slight problem here anyway. That this should be here. is what it should be, right? It should go back to 0
yes.
in the column position. So I want to fix that, but let's run it one more time. And we still have a problem there. So yes, you're right. We had a problem with the test case, but we also have a problem with the code. So we've got a breakpoint over in the code still. Let's go back over here in our cell position test. Let's hit Control-TD, and we'll
I really love debugging into a test like this. This is fantastic. You can set up any arbitrary scenario without having to run into your actual application. You run your test in debug mode, and you step through the exact situation that you suspect to be at fault, and you've got proof that somewhere in here there is a problem. So you've immediately narrowed your own personal problem space to where that problem is. It's fantastic workflow. Yes, I'm going to clear this breakpoint here for a second and go back over, and then I'll set it again, and now we'll run to it just so we can get to that the correct spot in there. Expected true whether it's false. Can I jump back up here? Nope, not going to let me unwind. All right, we'll do it one more time. Let's set a breakpoint here. It's interesting. Okay, so let's do it again. We'll run one more time on that. Debug the test. Clear that. Run till we stop. Okay, that's where I want to be. Set the breakpoint inside increment right there. Oh, you know what I realized just happened? Is the increment already occurred. That's what happened here. I actually need to set the breakpoint that's what's happening on there. Whoops, so let's do this. Yes, that makes sense.
Set the breakpoint here instead. That's what I think is, oh no, wait, actually the increment could not have occurred. Let's jump in. I think I was wrong in that assumption. Let's jump in. We've got our is that working? We're checking 0 and 1. And that's false. No, we are. The increment did already happen. Okay, my bad. My bad, because the increment's happening here. That's where it's happening. Okay, one more time. Energy up, everybody. Here we go. This is going to do it.
All good.
I'm putting my entire reputation is on the line now at this point. Oh, except for I didn't hit debug test. I think my entire reputation just went down the tube. Oh, wait, I hit debug, and here we go. One more time, running till we hit the breakpoint. We're at the breakpoint now. Now I'm feeling really good about this, setting the breakpoint there, running to it. Let's figure out what's wrong.
So this is the moment. This is where things are apparently taking a turn for the worst inside the code. So we're going to figure out exactly what's going wrong now.
Exactly. All right. So if table's null is false, that's good. By the way, this is dead path de-emphasis right here. You can see what's happening there. Now
so once again, this is our debug visualizer predicting and in fact showing us the value of things, in some cases prior to their actual evaluation, so we can determine what's going on.
Right. For example, here we've got column plus plus right there. You can see that. So we see that it's 9. There it goes to 10. If column is greater than or equal to table.columns, that's true. Well, we increment the row, but you see what's happening here, Rory?
Yeah, I see what's happening.
To set column to 0.
We've forgotten to reset. This is the old typewriter thing where we haven't reset to the left-hand side before we continue typing off the end of the page.
Exactly. So we're going to come back here into column 0, and we're going to say, well, let's go ahead and set that to 0. And now let's run it and see if the entire test passes. We'll clear that breakpoint. And yes, the entire test does pass. So, okay, with that, let's do the last thing on here, which I want to do, which is I want to say, okay, let's use cell position now. Let's go in and we'll create a new class, call it cell. Inside of here, we're going to have a field of type cell position. I think I just want to call it position is what I want to do. So there, we'll call it position like that. I think I want to show another cool 17.1 feature here, which is called Delegate Members. And Delegate Members is useful when position is useful to you. In other words, I've got a class that might hold other classes, and what I want to do is essentially have my outer parenting class have more external behavior that's similar to the owned class. And I'll give you an example of what I mean there. So here, for example, we've got cell position. And you've just seen us build this, and cell position has got a column and a row. Well, my cell, I might want to give my cell class column and row properties as well. But I don't want to have them separate from the cell position. I just want to bubble those up is what I want to do.
Sure,
And
you're
so
going to expose the properties of your inner object in this case.
yes, exactly. So I want to choose delegate members is what I want to do. So I'm going to do delegate members, and then it looks through all the members, and here it sees, well, you've got only one position, and I can just hit the right arrow to open up its properties, and I can choose the ones I want. So I'm going to say, let's pull out column, row, is at, and maybe table as well. Okay. Sure. So, or maybe not. I'm kind of on the fence on table, to be honest, but I definitely want column and row and is at. So now I'll select all those. I'll hit enter, and now you can see what's going on here. It's built these methods for me. The methods work right now, and they're just simply passing on into the position piece that's right here.
If we look at the code that's been generated, it's basic boilerplate stuff for this exact scenario, but it's boilerplate you don't need to type, okay? There's no scope here for getting it wrong. There's no scope for missing parentheses, missing curly braces, semicolons out of place. You don't need to know any of this stuff. So yet again, this is another problem, another set of cognitive load that CodeRush is just relieving you of so that you can keep your head in the problem space once more.
Yeah. That's great. You know, Roy, I just realizing I would love to have you online all the time as I write code, so you can just explain while I write code. That would be awesome. Just do this live. So, and while you were saying that, I was thinking, oh yeah, let's create a constructor for this that takes in column and row, because I would really like to be able to initialize cell position in that manner. And with that, I think that I feel like we've shown kind of the essence of a number of the new features that are in 17.1. You've seen me write this code from scratch, created test cases, classes, all of this, all from scratch. And not only that, but I feel pretty good about this code. This code that we're building is code that could be used to later on serve as the foundation for something useful.
Yeah, it's very good.
All right. So with that, let me switch over to, and we'll handle questions at this point.
Okay, well, if anybody does have any questions, feel free to add them to the little question panel there, and we'll get to those. We certainly have at least one here, if I can just stretch this open.
Well, it looks like
we have a few of them,
was telling me that my greater than equals should be greater than. That, I'm not sure if that's true or not. Column is never set to 0. I think the way I had it is that, so just to go back into the code, because I think there's some discussion about that. So from my perspective, columns were going to go 0 through the number of columns minus 1. So a column was going to be an index and row was going to be an index property, whereas num columns and num rows were going to be the total numbers. And so with that, my contention is that this code is correct and this code is correct because we're indexing 0 through that number minus 1. So if we ever hit that number, we're outside of bounds.
Uh-huh.
All right. What else?
Okay, so we've got a couple of questions. Somebody missed our introduction, so wanted an overall sort of statement as to why one would use CodeRush rather than not using CodeRush. For me, at least, the answer is CodeRush empowers you to do what you do more thoroughly, more accurately, and certainly faster than you ever would before, with less worry about the ceremony of what you're doing. Okay, so there's less room for error, and you basically achieve what you set out to do far quicker.
Yeah. In our introduction, we were talking about lowering cognitive load, right? So instead of focusing on distracting tasks, such as tedious code to build, or even things that you maybe are not realizing are tedious that are just distracting you in minor ways, what CodeRush tries to do is pull that distraction away. Essentially say, look, I'll give you a faster, easier, more efficient way to write the same code that you're already writing, right? And even in some cases, better code than you're already writing, and more and more robust, tested code, right? That sort of thing. It can give you those things with lower cognitive load on your part.
So we saw at least 3 great examples of that. We saw templates that are used to emit tests. So again, you don't have to actually write the outer pieces of the test manually. We've got our new declare menu, Alt Insert, which allows you to do any number of sort of involved processes. So like we did some equality members that we implemented, and I believe you also delegated members at one point during there. So those are things that you don't have to worry about. And then one of my favorites, the smart duplicate line, which allows you to do a lot of repetitive work but picking up on the nuance of what changes between the copies of the lines. We had multiple tables, for example, getting created there, and CodeRush taking over and figuring out the nuance, as I say, between the different interactions so that you don't have to worry about that so much. Get through it quicker.
Yeah, so in general, the benefit is you can write code faster if you choose to. You can write code certainly more efficiently, right? You can see problems in code more clearly, and you can visualize code and you can navigate faster as well. So there are features if coding more efficiently is important to you or sounds like maybe that's a benefit you want to try, CodeRush is definitely something that can help you out. Krunoslav asks, is it possible to make properties with a notify changed event? The answer is yes. We have solutions in both the templates for doing that and as well in the CodeRush menu to be able to do that, to implement iNotify property changed in there. What CodeRush do you have for Xamarin is a question that Eugene is asking. Well, you can use CodeRush with Xamarin development. We don't have anything specific for Xamarin itself. There are no features that we built specifically for Xamarin. However, they're built-in features in CodeRush that you can use for Xamarin development. For example, if you're working in XAML, we've got a number of XAML features. If you are working in code, a number of features as well that you can use it for XAML, and you can create your own templates for Xamarin development as well. So for example, you can create templates to lay out forms if you wanted to. So there are basic features that are there, nothing out of the box that right now we're advertising is exclusively for XAML development. And this is true for a wide range of development targets that Visual Studio supports. There may be, right now we have heavy refactoring support for Visual Basic and for C#. But if you're using, for example, F# or JavaScript or HTML, you can still gain benefits from CodeRush, navigation benefits, selection benefits, extending our support out to support other languages and other specific platform targets. So those things are just likely to improve. Klaus asked me, what was the shortcut used for the public cell position operator ++ method? That was a template that I created that we're going to roll into the product. So we will have templates for the op++ and the op operators for doing that, for creating those. And I expect to put I'll put a blog post out on that later today. Look for that so I can explain and show that if you want that sooner. In fact, if you want
that note, it's worth pointing out that all of the templates that we have, obviously we ship a lot of templates with the product, but you can create your own templates for your own niche scenario. So if you've got domain-specific language or specific arrangements of C# or VB or whatever it might be that you wish to omit with just a few characters, it's entirely possible for you to create your own templates. There's no magic here. There's nothing hidden. There is obviously a method to how it works, but we have blog posts on this, and what I'll do at the end of this, I'm going to put out a blog post with a whole load of the links that we've had in the chat here and a few that didn't come up, and we will also link to previous posts on how to create your own templates. So there's a lot of information out there. There's a few questions about where we have documentation, for example. I've also stuck a link in there about our sort of a homepage for documentation on CodeRush for Roslyn, and I'll include that as well.
So I'm at the chat window, and I want to pop this in here, the op++ template, and I'm trying to figure out how to do a new line in the chat window, but I can't figure it out. I'm hitting Shift-Enter, Control-Enter. I guess I'm just going to pass in the template like it is. There you go. So there I copied the template. For anybody who really wants to get their hands on it faster, you can see what's going on there. So with that template, all I did was type in op++ and hit the space bar, and it filled in the rest for me. So that's what's going on there. So that's expected. Expect that to ship in the next release. By the way, we didn't talk about this. The CodeRush team is releasing new versions of CodeRush every 30 days. You can get CodeRush on the Visual Studio Marketplace if you choose to. In fact, Rory, if you can throw a link to that out in the chat window.
Yeah, we'll do.
If you haven't done that already, you can get that. You can download it. If you've got a subscription already to DXperience, DX Universal, you should have access to CodeRush already. So I encourage you to install it. You can ask questions on Twitter. Just include CodeRush somewhere in there. We'll see that. We can respond there. You can also go through the support center. And there are two versions of CodeRush. There is a $49 community support edition, $49 community support edition, and there's a $249 full support edition. And you get, with either of those, you get a year's worth of updates as you go through. Someone's asking about CodeRush for Visual Code. Yeah, we have nothing that we are announcing in that direction at this time, is what I'll say. There's no promise that anything will come in that direction, but it is something that we are aware of and are taking a look at. Ultimately, right, ultimately we are going to support any market where there is a market out there. Right. So, for example, if there's a market out there, ultimately it will depend on how we evaluate the market. If we believe there's a market there, then we will go after it and support it. Personally, I like the idea of being out there and supporting Visual Code. Yep. What is the best resource for learning how to create custom CodeRush templates? You've got an answer to that already, right? Is that right?
I'm going to tweet out, or say tweet out, I'm going to put some links in my blog post that will follow up this particular webinar. We've certainly got blog posts. If you want to go and just search almost templates CodeRush, you'll be bound to find some useful information on that. The process is essentially the same for any version of CodeRush that we've had in the past. Nuances are few and far between, really, because actually it's a pretty solid system no matter where you come from it. But if you want to find me also on Twitter, I'm just at Rory Becker, and I'm quite happy to help anybody directly. Or if you want to contact me by email, roryb@devexpress.com. Again, quite happy to do that.
Okay. Any idea when CodeRush for Roslyn will be functionally equivalent to legacy CodeRush? And well, Nikki's asking that, and I'm going to say, Nikki, the answer is probably never. And the reason why is because at this point we're highly focused on making CodeRush for Roslyn its own product that makes sense about the engine that we're exploiting, that sort of thing. Now, with that said, there are still features on our list that from CodeRush Classic that we want to bring in, right? So one of them I've noticed is in this list is a question about invert selection. And so, yes, that's on our list, for example. The code duplication detection and consolidation. Also, it's something that's on our list. So there are things that we want to create, but in terms of functional equivalency, already CodeRush for Roslyn has a number of advances that are better than what are in CodeRush Classic. CodeRush Classic, by the way, we've essentially stopped development on that, and all focus has been on CodeRush for Roslyn, I think, for about a year now. CodeRush Classic is still maintained in terms of fixing bugs, but it does not have all of the features, especially a lot of the features I highlighted in this demo. And as a result, personally, I'm now at a point where, for me, CodeRush for Roslyn is faster at typing most of the code that I write than CodeRush Classic was. And there are a few small minor exceptions to that. And those are in features that I'm waiting for us to port over. The second one that comes to mind is one that I probably use more than anybody, but on demos like on any code that works in two-dimensional space, it was a great feature, and it was called rotate 90 degrees, which would it would take your column variable and turn it into row variables. It would take your left and turn it into your top and turn it to left, that sort of thing. So if I wrote code that processed something, for example, left to right, top to bottom, I could then take that, apply this change to it, and then it would process code top to bottom and then right to left. So I found that useful a number of times when I'm dealing in two-dimensional spaces, when my code is dealing in two-dimensional space. So that's one that I'm missing, and that right now I have to do it by hand if I've got CodeRush for Roslyn installed. But there's so many features of CodeRush for Roslyn. The new declare menu, for example, is much faster than doing things the old way. The smart duplicate line is faster than templates, and that is something extraordinary. That I never thought I'd actually say, that there's a feature that makes using templates slower, right? And you saw me use smart duplicate line a few times in there. So, in terms of functional equivalency, at this point, I would that's not a dream that we hold in our hearts. Instead, or the dream that we hold in our hearts is to make CodeRush for Roslyn the best possible product, the most stable, the fastest loading, and the lowest memory use that we can. Those are our goals, and whatever satisfies those goals, we will build. And yet, yes, we will do it. We're also doing these based on customer demand as well. So if there's something you want, you can ask for it on Support Center.
Just to back up that point about speed, I've also dropped a quick link into the chat, which again I'll add to the blog post, which was a previous blog post on the speed of our test runner, which certainly at the time of doing the blog post was considerably faster than any other alternative out there. And that's one of the benefits that we can get from concentrating on the newer product. Effectively, we can spend our time building from scratch in this case and sorting out that, every last little speed issue. As for, there's another question there about the resources used by CodeRush. I am looking for the previous post we did on that, but I think certainly, Mark, the stats that we found on that were that we were using considerably less memory than any other product, and we were starting up quicker as a result. And basically, yes, it was just win, 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 win. There was no real downside at all.
Right. Now but I would also say that this is a kind of a continuous battle, the battle against memory use and speed that we are waging, right? As you add more features, you're applying pressure in essentially the wrong direction, right? Yep. And so we are continuously looking for innovative ways to get CodeRush to load faster. We're actually working closely with Microsoft on this endeavor as well to increase or rather decrease our loading time, increase our loading speed. So yeah, these are high priorities for me. Rob is asking, he says currently CodeRush for Roslyn doesn't support the features that CodeRush Classic has for HTML and JavaScript coding. Are these in the pipeline? And the answer is yes, they are in the pipeline. We are releasing, like I say, every 30 days. They are being worked on right now. I expect that you will see these as the releases come up. You'll see these trickled out a release at a time. That's what I'm expecting. So you'll see some initial support coming out for JavaScript and HTML coming up in either the next release or the release after that, and then on a regular basis every 30 days. I would expect more features supporting JavaScript and HTML coming out. Reinhard says, unless you know the shortcuts, you overlook a lot of the functions. I think that's absolutely true. That's why Rory and I are doing the Feature of the Week videos. We are blogging about the features as well. We have a number of videos that we've recorded that talk about the features. You can also go out and see my blog and see past blogs where I've talked about some of the features at devexpress.com/Mark. You can follow me on Twitter at MillerMark. You'll see these all at the end as well. In fact, why don't I pop these up right now? We'll go up to the next side right over here. You can see there's my Twitter handle right there. So yes, that's absolutely true. There is if you know the shortcuts, you can go quickly. Fortunately,
I've just added a cheat sheet, to the link to our most recent, that's still quite a little bit old now, but that's our most recent cheat sheet for the keystrokes for CodeRush. So various templates specified in there, some of the test runner shortcuts, that kind of thing. This will need updating, but certainly it'll give you a good start on a little perusal around our feature set.
Right, and the other thing is that the shortcuts generally, learning the shortcuts, the return on investment is pretty much immediate. You learn the shortcut, you try it out, and you get the benefit of the cost of learning right there within the first few uses, which aids in retention. You get a sense of, hey, there's value to this, right? So you can go in and you can explore, you can learn, and you can reap those benefits of that, which pays the price, the cost of learning, as opposed to in another world or with other products, you might need to dive in deeply for the learning curve. Now, with that said, we still have features that bubble up and are available, like the CodeRush menu is available through the Visual Studio Smart Tag menu, right? So when you bring that up, if you see the Smart Tag, you'll bring that up. You can get access to CodeRush features right there. So out of the box, without learning any features at all, you can start benefiting from CodeRush immediately if you choose to. The other thing I should mention on this is we have a very cool, maybe cool is not the best word, but we have a setup wizard, which is very useful, which talks about, gives you a screenshot of the feature, asks, do you want to turn it on or off? That sort of thing. And you can go through each one, and it tells you a little bit about the features and what they do. So for example, here you see that you can optionally turn on the numeric keypad bindings for selection decrease and increase. These by themselves are easy to remember keys, right? So again, the keystrokes in general are easy to remember. There's discoverability in terms of how you can set these up. There are multiple ways to discover either through the product itself or through our videos and the blog posts online. You can also ask questions out on Twitter, that sort of thing. So there are different ways to explore and find the features that apply to you, that are useful to you. So I'll just go through these and you can see some of the pages. Go ahead,
Just for anybody who is looking at the chat, I've also posted a link to a video we did on the CodeRush setup wizard, so that'll take you through various pages of that, explaining what some of it means, a little bit more depth than we have time for right now. So that's there. That'll also be added to the blog post that I'm going to release after this.
Okay, and Rory, just to be totally honest with you, I was deep in focus reading one of the questions, and I missed part of what you said, and I feel like I might about to say something to answer a question that you already answered. But in case I am, just let me know.
I was just suggesting that we have a video going through the CodeRush setup wizard, and I gave a link to that in the chat.
That was the piece I missed. Okay, so we have that. We're going to get a link in there. Klaus says, I love it, though sometimes the shortcuts with the Swedish keyboard layout. Notice this now a lot when someone stole my computer, had to reinstall a new machine, so I lost all my settings. The settings were stored together with the DevExpress account. We do too, to be honest. We think that it's a great idea. We are still looking into solving that particular challenge. That's what we'd like. For now, the settings are in one location, but the good news is you can specify where that location is, and you can come right in here, grab the settings folder. You can just click on that to go out and find that location, and you can also change it inside of the options as well. So both of these things are available to you there.
So I've taken advantage of that myself, Mark. What I've done is I've changed it so that my CodeRush settings are stored within my Dropbox account, so that when I go back to my home PC and I load up another copy of Studio, having changed some settings at work, I now have the exact same set of settings reproduced in both locations. So that can be quite useful.
So so that's one of the things that you can do. So import and export settings is one of the options. So you can specify the storage folder right there, and you can choose this button to import or export the settings. So that's available from the CodeRush options dialog. So I got a comment that says CodeRush used to kill Visual Studio when doing code analysis. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. Let's maybe go into support on that. If you're talking about speed, I have a feeling that speed problem is gone in CodeRush for Roslyn. And that's one of the other things in our speed. Roslyn, we're finding that CodeRush loads faster. Yeah, he's talking about speed. I'm seeing that, and memory use. Yeah. So CodeRush for Roslyn you're likely to not see those problems at all. Those problems are unlikely to be there at all. If you do see them, we want to hear about those problems, right? Like I say, the speed memory issue, this is something that we are always expect to be applying resources to always be striving to make sure that we are, that the experience with CodeRush is fast and lean on memory use. Okay, notice also that CodeRush lags in Visual Studio with solutions with lots of projects and have a lot of files open at the same time. Can't really create anything to recreate that scenario on a sample project, but maybe something to look into. Yeah, again, that's from Klaus. This may be CodeRush for Classic that you're talking about. If that is the case, I've personally seen issues with C++ projects that have lots of files, or huge projects. CodeRush for Roslyn should be better at that. Also notice though that the other thing you want to do, if you do see a lag with very, very large solutions, what you want to do as a test is try it without CodeRush. And if you still see the lag inside of Visual Studio, it could be that your machine is just not fast enough to handle it. In other words, the problem is could be coming from the Visual Studio Roslyn engine itself. And as an example, what will happen sometimes on incredibly large projects, like for example, I've got a solution with 109 projects in it, and I have lazy loading turned on in Visual Studio for that. And if I open it up and I try to do something, I will experience a lag because Visual Studio now has to go out and parse like 110 projects or something like that, or 100 projects, something like that.
That's particularly the case where maybe you're looking for all references to some very commonly used type that you've got. It has to load all the other projects in order to check whether they do use that type. So you introduce that extra lazy load. It's a benefit initially because your studio or your solution will load quicker, but when you use a feature which inherently needs to have all of those projects loaded, that's when the hit comes in, and it makes it look like the feature's more slow than it otherwise would be.
Oh, okay. Roy's got a great question. He says, when creating and revising CodeRush templates, is there a quick way to find sub-templates that are referenced within the main template I'm working on? I've had a difficult time finding where the sub-templates were defined when modifying existing templates. That is a great question. And let's go ahead and we'll bring up a code template for that. Let's bring up PI, for example. So PI is a template that creates a read-write property of type integer, and it starts here. I typed in PI because I know that I is an int, and int is in my list of types that will be substituted here. If you see this, by the way, question marks in the name of the template, that just means we're substituting a list of anything that can go there. It's just a list of letters matching to actual types. So I matches to the int.
Parameter to the template.
So it's exactly, you can think of it as a parameter of the template, that I just hit P in the letter I or P in the letter B for Boolean or S for string. And it starts here. So the question is, how do I drill into this? In CodeRush Classic, you would right-click and choose Drill In. In CodeRush for Roslyn, you hit the Control key and you hover over it and click. And that's the easy way to get in. So my apologies for the lack of discoverability there. We expect to address that in a future release. Okay, so that's the answer to you, Roy. Printable cheat sheet, which Chad's asking about that. We've already got a link to that. You can put that, Roy, if you can put that link next to the question as well, that would be great.
Sure.
Will the CodeRush tool window be reappearing? Talking about the tool window that taught CodeRush. The answer is, I think the answer is yes to that. But it won't come unless it is, my opinion is it won't come unless it is better than the one in CodeRush Classic. My personal feeling on the one in CodeRush Classic is that it was not as intelligent appearing as I wanted it to be. I wanted it to have a sense of what you had done and up to this point as well. As opposed to just looking at the line of code you've changed, I wanted to look at the whole block and understand where you were and what you did with it, and based on that, make suggestions. Because CodeRush is more than just features for changing one line of code. CodeRush is often features for changing multiple lines of code. So for example, if we watch you create a class, and then we watch you create a constructor in that class, and then set up parameters and hook up the parameters to read-only properties and fields. So we see you do all that. We want to come back and say, hey, there's a faster way to do everything that you just did. And here's the suggestion. That's kind of what we want to do. And so, those are my feelings on that. We have had a number of requests for that feature to come back. It's an interactive training feature in CodeRush that watches what you do and makes suggestions based on what you're doing. I want it to have a bigger, wider scope. I want it to understand and see a bigger picture before it makes suggestions. So that's my take on that. Works a lot better with Roslyn, but still notice from time to time. Notice it. I think Clus saying the lag again. I think he's talking about that. Did that, but was only noticeable with CodeRush using i7 machine. Okay, so he's just giving us information. Does not look like it is a question. And by the way, Clus, you can get in touch with support@devexpress.com. I totally encourage anybody that has any questions, any desire for, if you're experiencing CodeRush lag of any kind, I totally encourage you to come to contact support, especially if you can get us something that we can reproduce. You can get us data on that, or if you're willing to install maybe a special version of CodeRush that does some diagnostic logging for us. We are, this is something we are, if you want to work with us, we totally want to apply resources in that direction. So
yeah, I mean, we're all about making the product more, just better. Features, sure, but we want it to be the fastest, simplest, easiest to use tool on the market. Simple as that. We want your life to become easier.
And looks like the last question that we have in here is a way to save and restore code snippets, like a snippet manager. Well, if you're talking about the CodeRush templates, which are kind of like Visual Studio snippets on steroids, we already have that. And if you right-click on a folder, you can choose Export Folder, or you can choose Import Templates. Both of these will work. And in terms of saving and loading your template files that are out there. So the feature is there. You just right-click a folder. You can save it out to a folder, share it with your team, that sort of thing. So that's another way to do it. Okay. And with that, it looks like I've answered all the questions. And if that's the case, I just want to say thanks to everyone. And I'll just tell you, the CodeRush team is hard at work, passionate about making this the best product possible for Visual Studio to really help you write code with less work. If you have ideas for features, things that can help you get there faster, we definitely want to hear from you. And we are working, like I say, releasing every 30 days with new features, improvements, bug fixes, faster performance, less memory use. All of that is happening on a sprint cycle of about 30 days. So, and I also want to say thank you for your support. If you don't mind, if you're out there and you love CodeRush and you're having a good time and appreciating it, go out to the Visual Studio Gallery page. Rory, if you can paste that out in the chat window one more time.
Yeah,
and leave a review. Leave a review for us. Let us know. Let your fellow developers know how much CodeRush is helping you out, so so they can see that maybe they should be trying it out as well. And with that, Amanda, I say thank you to everybody, and I will pass it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Exciting stuff for 17.1. All right, everybody. So I'm just going to go over really quickly what's coming up this week for the rest of our launch webinars. Tomorrow we have new in 17.1 DevExpress. Join our CTO Julian Bucknell and Mehul Harry for an in-depth review of upcoming HTML5 and JavaScript products, including our new React Data Grid. And then Friday is dashboards, reporting, and analytics. Again, our CTO Julian Bucknell, along with Paul Usher, will show you how we're reshaping our data analytics product line and how you can deliver more in less time with 17.1. And like I mentioned previously, today's webinar will be made available on our DevExpress YouTube channel. I will post that link in the chat box. And that is it for this one. Thank you so much to Mark and Rory. Thank you all for joining us. And of course, thank you for choosing DevExpress. Bye-bye.